Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited for today's video as we discuss James Harden. And yes, he's been at the forefront of NBA discussion this offseason, him and Damian Lillard. The Damian Lillard trade's been resolved. He's a Milwaukee Buck. We know that. The coverage has been here on the channel. Let's talk some more about James Harden though today, because I do think we could see a real possibility that Harden gets moved before Monday. Now I'm recording this very early on Friday morning, about 1:30 a.m. Central Time is the time I'm recording this. And the reason is because I don't want to wait on this video. I think that there's a real chance that James Harden could get moved soon. And there's a few reasons why. One, he has not been a participant in a lot of Sixers activities. He has not played in the Sixers preseason game. He has not been really participating in Sixers practices. Of course, missed media day. There's been a lot of reporting on that. And some of that, there's reports from Shams Charania saying for personal reasons, Adrian Wojnarowski has left out those comments in his own reporting on the situation. So it's kind of an interesting dilemma we have here of, is James Harden missing these events for a good reason? Does he have something going on off the court that would permit him from missing these things? Are the Sixers okay with him missing some of these events and some of these practices, games, whatever? Or is this an actual problem? And if it's an actual problem, which some people speculate it is, it could push the 76ers to getting a deal done now sooner than later for James Harden, which I think is why there is a possibility here, but that a deal does get done before Monday. We are just days away from the NBA season, which is so exciting. I am so stoked for the beginning of basketball to be back. It's just been awesome having the preseason. So just to address it here with some of the haters here on James Harden about, he's not going to elevate anyone in the playoffs. This is like out of prime James Harden in the postseason. This is 23 points per game, 5.5 boards a game, 6.3 assists per game, 1.7 steals per game. He's top 5 in playoff points, assists, steals, and threes among active players. So people are going to say, playoff dropper. Okay, no, he's not really. So, I'm tired of the whole conversation, to be honest. I'm not going to entertain any of that, but I'm going to get it out of the way early. So let's talk about what the 76ers end goal here is now from all of this kind of hoopla around James Harden. What I speculate here, this is a good time to remind you guys, go give me a follow on Twitter. Link is in the description for that. Also go join the Discord. Link is in the description. A lot of great basketball conversation in there every single day. So if you want to be a part of something special, talk hoops with a lot of awesome people, that's the place to be. We do a lot of fun games and different types of things. Draft coverage is always fun in there as well. But let's get back to the topic here. The 76ers, what do I think they're aiming to do by next offseason? Well, it's really all about Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and cap space, and that's what they're angling for here, and I think they're set up to do it. Now, this report here comes from Tristan Pompey, who, I'm going to be honest, I don't trust the reporting that far, but I do think that there is a situation in which the reporting here is semi-accurate. The report here is that the Sixers are looking for 2 first-round picks and Terrence Mann. Now, I do believe that if it was just 1 first-round pick and Mann, a deal would have already been done. The Clippers are hesitant on that, and I think for a good reason. We'll talk about why in just a minute. But what I think the 76ers are hoping to do, they're hoping to take their current assets, which is a couple of second-round or first-round picks themselves. They're trying to pair that together with what the Clippers could theoretically give them, which is a couple of first-round picks, and turn that into a potential mega offer for a star in this offseason, which we'll look at. But if they trade James Harden now, it gives this guy right here, Tyrese Maxey, a really great opportunity to maybe blossom into a star point guard or a star lead guard, I would say. Maybe not full point guard, but someone who's going to have the ball in his hands, run a ton of pick and rolls, do that kind of thing on a night-to-night basis. If he does that, there's a good chance he makes an all-star team. If he makes an all-star team, the perception around the league on him changes drastically. Agents are going to say, look, that's a second star player next to Joel Embiid, and they would maybe angle to get their players onto that roster this upcoming offseason. So the whole thing built around Embiid and Maxey. You'd also have Terrence Mann and DeAnthony Melton. That's kind of your backcourt here. These 3 guys, Mann, Maxey, Melton. And then you would get a star player from a trade. Not exactly sure who that would be right now, but I'm thinking a Paul George type of player. Now, they could go a number of different ways. In this example, I'm talking about a wing because I kind of see Maxey, Mann, and Melton being the combination of the backcourt. But we've already seen Harden plus Maxey plus Embiid is really, really good. So if the player that became available to get via trade was a point guard, well, the Sixers would be lined up to get something done there. If a high-end point guard does become available, the Sixers shouldn't hesitate on that. It could still be a point guard, but it more than likely, I think they would prefer for it to be a wing. And with the way that the cap space is going to be set up with their cap holds, Tobias Harris' expiring contract, they want to go out into free agency as well. And I think this has been very underreported upon this offseason so far. The Sixers are angling heavily for cap space. I've been saying it for a very long time. For those who've been following the channel since May or April, I've been saying that, Joel Embiid's a flight risk if the Sixers don't do this right. This is their best shot at retaining Joel Embiid, is loading up big time this next offseason, which is why when James Harden opted into his contract, it was a dream come true for them, because they at worst had Harden for the season, or they could trade him for assets. And if they turn him into assets, it makes it easier to trade for a guy this offseason. And worst case, if they don't, they have cap space to do something anyway. Maybe it's not 2 stars, but at least it's 1 star through free agency. And this is where a guy like Pascal Siakam, who has not been extended by the Atlanta Hawks, could come into play. Where the Sixers go into next season with, say, Tyrese Maxey, Terrence Mann, player X on the wing, Pascal Siakam and Joel Embiid as their starting 5, PJ Tucker off the bench, a few other pieces as well that they could probably fit in, a mid-level exception type player. You're looking at a really good core, DeAnthony Melton off the bench. The team would be pretty darn good. I think that's what they're aiming for. Now, you might say, well, why haven't the Clippers done this? I know people are getting confused here on why wouldn't they just take a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks, and Terrence Mann to make it happen. Well, there's a couple of reasons. The Clippers are moving into a new stadium here in the next couple of years, and because of that, you don't want to have absolutely no young talent. You want something that will entice fans. Now, Terrence Mann's not the youngest guy. He's kind of one of those fake age players where everyone thinks he's way younger than he is, but he's still a part of the Clippers' core long-term probably. So giving him up in a deal for a guard well into his 30s who I think notably is having a little bit of slippage in his play, that's kind of dangerous, right? And then not to mention, it's 2 first-round picks on top of that. And listen, 2 first-round picks isn't that steep of a price for a guard of James Harden's caliber. But the difficulty here for the Clippers is that's literally what they have to offer. They can't offer more than that, which means if they trade for James Harden, they're almost locked into into that type of roster. So let's go look at an actual deal here. And for a few reasons, we have to talk about what the Sixers want to do. Remember, they want to angle for cap space. So Norman Powell here, $18 million for a couple of years. That doesn't work for them. They do not want Norman Powell back in a trade. So, in this situation, James Harden is going to go to the Clippers. That's the first player we're going to start with. That's the most important thing. In here as well, we need to include a 2028 first-round pick and a 2030 first-round pick. That's the only combination of first-round picks that the Clippers could technically trade that would include 2 in a single package. So then when we get to Terrence Mann, you'll notice the money here is not at all close. There's $25 million difference. So I saw people on Twitter saying, oh my gosh, the money doesn't even work on that trade. Well, yeah, obviously. If a package includes Terrence Mann and 2 first-round picks, that doesn't mean that's the only thing in the package. This is where we get into a salary filler. A guy like Marcus Morris, who I think the Clippers would be very happy to include in something like this. And of course, the most important thing, the Sixers would be okay with taking in his money, $17 million on an expiring contract. That is not a problem for them at all. They would be happily willing to take in Marcus Morris. He could play for them this year in spot minutes, probably not a ton, but a bit. Help them compete a little bit this year. But then they'd be able to wash their hands of him, which is really what they're looking to do. And now all of a sudden we're only trying to kind of close the gap on $8 million or so, which is where we could see, maybe a player like Nicholas Batum get in there, Robert Covington. I think that the Clippers would prefer to keep Batum over Covington just at this spot in time. But we're going to throw Covington into this deal, and now you're seeing the 76ers are actually taking in a little bit more money, which isn't too bad, but if we're trying to get this contract a little bit closer, you could see someone like Daniil House go back out to the Clippers if they wanted to. It really kind of comes down to it. Maybe Jaden Springer. Like, this is a great example of a guy that maybe he bridges the gap a little bit here for the Clippers, and the reason why is because, maybe the Clippers are saying, well, look, we don't want to give you those 2 first-round picks and Terrence Mann. You at least have to give us something back. Jaden Springer has flashed this preseason. It's not like a grade A prospect here. It's not a blue chipper in this type of deal. Obviously, you're not going to get that if you're the Clippers based on this package. You're getting the best player in the trade by quite a big margin. But getting something back like Jaden Springer, a small little asset, could be nice, as the Clippers have tried to bring in some young pieces. Notably, they did that with Bones Highland last year. They did it with KJ Martin. They have some other reclamation projects, Josh Primo, BJ Boston. They got guys that they're trying to kind of build into good players. So they're trying to make everything work, but this is the type of deal that you could realistically see coming to fruition if the Clippers open up on that second first-round pick to offer. Now, this is a steep price. Maybe there's a protection on this pick that they end up taking. And now, if we were to talk about kind of what that could turn into, these assets plus the 76ers assets could turn into a wide variety of different things. Whatever the 76ers would really want to pursue, they'd have the ability to get into some of those talks and negotiations. They're slated to have cap space, so you wouldn't even have to worry that much about matching money. You could send out whatever contracts, PJ Tucker, and get a little bit of extra money off of your books if you wanted to, if you're Philadelphia, in future moves. I think, a year from now, PJ Tucker will have some value around the league still if they wanted to trade him. Maybe get a couple second-round picks for him or something on the type of contract he's on that's more than reasonable, even though he is quite up there in age. Still something that I think could realistically happen. And from a standpoint here, I think this definitely does make the Sixers worse this year. But part of their goal is not necessarily to 100% compete for the championship this year. Now, obviously, that's what they're trying to do. They are trying to do that. But they have to also look at this long term, and putting Tyrese Maxey in a ball-dominant role could be very good for his development and for kind of the narrative around the league on how good the Sixers could be in a couple of years, because they're trying to sell themselves to agents and free agents right now that, look, this is a great place to be. We're going to get your player in a real winning situation next to Embiid and Maxey. And I think they're going to be able to do that if they pulled something like this off, where Covington, Mann, Morris all fit around Embiid and Maxey to begin with. I think Mann would be a really nice piece for them, and is definitely a movable contract if they wanted to go that way, but he's cheap enough that it's worth keeping. And then for the Clippers, if you get something like Springer, that's a really nice pickup, but most importantly, James Harden here just completely changes the dynamic of the Los Angeles Clippers. We saw how dominant Harden was with the Brooklyn Nets as a facilitator. Now listen, Harden isn't necessarily in love with that. I think Harden wants to be a go-to scorer. There'll be nights with the Clippers where he's allowed to do that when PG and Kawhi are both resting or out with injuries. Harden would be the guy, and he wants that. He wants to be that, and he's proven how good he is in that type of role, including 2 40-plus point performances in the playoffs against Boston. So there's been moments when, without Joel Embiid, James Harden steps up big time, even for the 76ers, where he hasn't played his best basketball, but he's still been very, very darn good. The Clippers get a floor general, too, someone who I think would be instantly the best passer on the team. I think he would really elevate Ivica Zubac as a role man. I think he would set up Paul George and Kawhi with cleaner looks than they've ever gotten. Now, I think the tricky thing is, what do you do with Russell Westbrook, and what's your starting lineup look like if you're the Clippers? Do you just flat out start Harden, Russ, Kawhi, PG, and Zubac? Maybe, right? It's an interesting lineup dynamic. So there would be some things to work out, some things to figure out from the Clippers' perspective. But I do think this team is, fairly well positioned if they get James Harden to at least take a shot at some of the best teams in the Western Conference. Not guaranteeing that they would win, but I think if you are all in on a championship, James Harden does elevate your chances. I know people are going to scoff at that and say, oh, when has that ever happened? The guy went toe-to-toe with Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. And he had Chris Paul and Clint Capella and Trevor Ariza. That was not a fair matchup at all, and the Rockets still almost won. So James Harden, he's been in really high leverage moments, hasn't gotten the results he's looked for, but without him, the teams wouldn't even be anywhere close to that situation. So you have to give him some credit for that. Obviously, hasn't gotten it done, but still a guy who at times was one of the best players in the world, and I think could really mesh with this Clippers team. He's very, agile and fluid in the way that he can change his game from facilitating to scoring the basketball. There's really not a lot of players in the league, or in the history of the league rather, that have been able to do that the way that Harden does. So the Clippers getting him, I do think, would elevate them significantly. The Sixers, like I said, this is not a bad collection of players for them. I think Rocco, Morris, and Mann could all fit in different ways. You get 2 first-round picks that lets you go back into the marketplace this offseason, kind of reevaluate things, use cap space in a way that they, realistically, they're still set up for cap space without making this Harden trade, which is why they're holding out for the exact right amount of assets. But at some point, one of these two teams will budge. My expectation would be the Clippers, because I think Daryl Morey's crazy enough to just go into the season and just let it happen. But I don't know about the Clippers. I think, to me, if I was trading for James Harden, I wouldn't want to do it in February. You trade for him in February, you risk it being a 2-month rental. You don't really have the familiarity going to the playoffs as your guys are all in their mid-30s. With really no chemistry, and I think that's a mistake. So we'll see what happens. It's an interesting topic of conversation, but one that I think we do have to keep our eyes on. And remember, like the video started, I think there's a real chance that this could be done by Monday. So we'll have to see. This weekend's an important one in the NBA. The season's right around the corner. I'm so excited and stoked. I hope you guys are as well, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.